You know that feeling when you're a little girl and you believe in fairy tales, not just the princes and castles, but the feeling that your family is the enchanted forest around you, that they are the trees that will never let you fall. I had that. For a long time, I truly believed I had that. My name is Maya, and my fairy tale was built around my mother. She wasn't just my mom, she was my sun. A force of nature with a laugh that could fill a room and a hug that could mend any broken toy or bruised knee. My dad, he was quieter, a gentle satellite orbiting her bright light. He showed his love in different ways, fixing my bike, helping me with my science projects, a warm, steady hand on my shoulder. We weren't rich, but we were rich in love. Or so I thought. Our house was always loud, always full of my mom's friends from her various committees and clubs. She was the queen of our small town social scene, and I was her proud little princess. She'd dress me in matching outfits, curl my hair, and parade me around, beaming. "This is my Maya," she'd say. "My greatest accomplishment." I lapped it up. What little girl doesn't want to be her mother's greatest accomplishment? As I got older, things shifted subtly. The outfits she picked for me started to feel less like gifts and more like uniforms. The dreams I had to study art history, to travel the world were met with a tight smile. "But darling, you're so good with people. Why don't you study marketing? You could help me with my charity galas." She had a vision for my life, a perfect, picturesque life that mirrored her own. The right degree, the right job, the right husband from the right family. It was a script, and I was the lead actress. For a long time, I didn't even realize I was reading lines. Then I met Leo. Oh, Leo. He was the antithesis of a script. He was a jazz musician, a man who composed his life by ear. He had messy brown hair that fell into his eyes and a smile that was slow and real and reached all the way to his soul. We met at a dingy little blues bar where I'd gone with a friend, trying to be rebellious. He was on stage, playing a saxophone solo that felt like it was pulling the heart right out of my chest. He wasn't from the right family. His parents were retired teachers who lived in a cozy, book-filled house on the other side of town. They were kind, intellectual, and they loved their son for the passionate, creative man he was. They loved me too, for the person I was when I was with him, the real, unscripted Maya. My mother despised him. "A musician, Maya?" she said, the words sounding like a disease. "How does he plan to support you? With love songs?" "He's brilliant, Mom. He's getting his master's in music composition. He teaches. He has a plan, she'd sniff, as if the word itself was beneath her. "His parents are lovely people, I'm sure, but they don't have any standing. It was her favorite word. It meant money, it meant connections, it meant a name that opened doors. Leo's name opened the door to a practice room and a heart full of music. To me, that was everything. For 2 years, I lived a double life. There was the Maya my mother saw, the dutiful daughter studying marketing, attending her galas, dating the bland, suitable sons of her friends. And then there was the real Maya, who spent her nights curled up on Leo's couch, listening to him compose, talking about philosophy and art, feeling more seen and loved than I ever had in my life. The night he proposed was under a blanket of stars at the lake where we had our first date. He didn't have a ring. He had a simple, silver key. "It's to my heart, Maya," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's always been yours, but it's also to a savings account. I've been saving for a ring, for our future, but I don't want to wait. Marry me. Let's build a life that's ours. A beautiful, noisy, authentic life." I said yes. Of course I said yes. I was crying, laughing, and I felt like my heart was going to burst out of my chest with joy. Telling my mother was like stepping into a freezer. She was silent for a full minute, just staring at the key in my palm. Then, she forced a smile. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. "Well, I suppose we have a wedding to plan," and that's when the takeover began. My fairy tale wedding, as she called it, became her production. My simple, bohemian dreams of an outdoor ceremony by the lake were vetoed. It had to be the country club. My desire for a small, intimate gathering of close friends and family was dismissed. It had to be the entire town. My dress, which I'd pictured as simple lace, became a monstrous confection of silk and pearls that made me look like a wedding cake topper. Leo and I fought, quietly in our little apartment, surrounded by his sheet music. "It's our day, Maya," he'd say, his brow furrowed with worry. "This feels like her day, I know," I'd whisper, my stomach in knots. "But it's the only way she'll accept you. If we do it her way, she'll see how happy we are. She'll have to." I was still that little girl, you see, still believing that if I just played my part perfectly, the queen would finally bestow her blessing. Leo's parents, Helen and David, were saints. They saw the struggle. They offered to pay for the honeymoon, a trip to Italy. But my mother scoffed. "Italy is so common." So they did something else, something breathtakingly generous. They gave us a car, not just any car, a beautiful, vintage, hunter green Volvo wagon. It was David's father's car, meticulously maintained. "It's built to last," David said, his eyes twinkling as he handed Leo the keys. "Just like we know your love will be. Something solid, something real you can build your future in." I wept. It was the most meaningful gift I had ever received. It wasn't about money. It was about history and legacy and a profound, welcoming love. We decided we'd drive it on our honeymoon, a road trip up the coast, instead of flying anywhere. My mother's lips pursed into a thin line when she saw it. "A used car? How practical," but she didn't say more. I thought she'd accepted it. The wedding day arrived, a blur of hairspray and taffeta. I stood in the bridal suite, a stranger in my own skin, looking at the princess in the mirror. My father came in, his eyes soft. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick. But then he added, so quietly I almost missed it, "Just remember, no matter what happens today, you are loved for who you are." It was an odd thing to say. A splinter of unease wedged itself into my heart. The ceremony was a spectacle, but through it all, I held onto Leo's gaze. His eyes, full of so much love and patience, were my anchor. This was for him. This was for us. After this, we would be free. The reception was in the grand ballroom. Hundreds of people. My mother was in her element, holding court, the magnificent mother of the bride. The speeches began. My father's was short and sweet. Leo's was heartfelt and beautiful, making half the room cry. Then my mother stood up. She tapped her champagne flute, a tinkling sound that silenced the room. She was radiant, beaming. This was her moment. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my daughter," she began, her voice dripping with saccharine warmth. "Today, we not only joined two people in marriage, we joined two families." She spoke about our family, about legacy, about the future. It was all perfectly scripted. And then she paused, a dramatic practice pause. "And as we welcome Leo into our family," she said, her eyes sweeping over his parents, who were smiling warmly, "we want to make sure they start their new life on the right foot. A solid foundation." She smiled directly at me, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A predator's smile. "So, John and I are thrilled to give you your wedding gift." My heart, which had been a frantic bird, stilled. I looked at Leo. He looked as confused as I was. We'd already received their gift, a painfully formal silverware set. My mother's voice cut through the silence, clear as glass. "We're giving away the car his parents gifted you." The world did not so much shatter as it inverted. The air was sucked out of the ballroom. For a second, there was absolute dead silence. You could hear the ice melting in someone's glass. I saw Leo's face go blank with shock. I saw his mother, Helen, bring a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. His father, David, stared at his plate, his shoulders slumping in utter defeat. My mother, pleased with the dramatic effect, continued, her voice syrupy with false generosity. "We've donated it to the local youth shelter. They so desperately need a reliable vehicle for their outreach programs. We thought it was a wonderful way to start your marriage with an act of charity, of giving back to the community." She beamed, waiting for the applause. It came. A hesitant, confused smattering of claps from people who didn't understand the gravity of what had just happened. They thought it was a quirky, generous gesture. I stood there, frozen in my monstrous dress, my hand clutching Leo's so tightly I must have been cutting off his circulation. The heat of 1,000 eyes was on me. I saw the pity on some faces, the confusion on others, the gleeful schadenfreude on a few of my mother's friends. This wasn't a gift. It was a public execution. It was her way of saying, your husband's family's gift, their heartfelt gesture of love, is not good enough for my daughter. I am erasing it. I am replacing their simple, real love with my grand, performative charity. I am the benefactor here. I hold the power. She had taken the most meaningful symbol of our future and thrown it in the trash, all while wearing a smile. Leo leaned into me, his voice a low, devastated tremor. She can't do that. That was our car. My grandfather's car. I couldn't speak. My throat had sealed itself shut. I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He was studying his napkin, his face pale with shame. He had known. His odd warning. He had known. The rest of the reception was a waking nightmare. We went through the motions. We cut the cake. We had our first dance. But we were ghosts. The music sounded tinny and far away. Every laugh from my mother's table felt like a shard of glass in my skin. When we finally, mercifully left, we didn't have a car to drive away in. We took a taxi back to our apartment. We sat in the dark, still in our wedding clothes, the silence between us heavier than any sound. I started to cry, not delicate, bride-like tears, but great, heaving sobs that tore from a place so deep inside me I didn't know it existed. I cried for Leo. I cried for his wonderful, humiliated parents. I cried for the vintage Volvo, for the road trips we would never take in it. I cried for the girl who had believed her mother was the sun, only to realize she was a black hole, sucking in all the light and love around her. Leo held me. He didn't say it was okay. He didn't tell me to stop. He just held me, his own tears wet against my temple. Our wedding night, the night that was supposed to be the beginning of everything, was spent on the floor of our living room, grieving. The next morning, my phone was blowing up. Texts from friends saying how brave and generous my mother was. A text from my mother herself. I hope you loved your surprise. The shelter was so grateful. Can't wait to see the pictures. So I felt physically sick. I showed it to Leo. The look on his face, a mixture of heartbreak and fury, will haunt me forever. She doesn't see it, Maya, he said, his voice quiet and raw. She doesn't see what she did. She thinks she won, and that's when the grief began to curdle. The hot, helpless tears began to cool into something else, something solid and cold. I went to see my parents. I walked into their perfect house, still wearing the same clothes from the day before, my face swollen and bare. How could you? My voice was a rasp. How could you do that to Leo? To his parents? To me? My mother looked up from her magazine, genuinely perplexed. Do what, darling? I gave you a beautiful wedding and made a charitable donation in your name. You should be thanking me. That old car was an eyesore anyway. My father shuffled in. Now, Maya, your mother meant well. Meant well? I echoed, my voice trembling with a rage so pure it was almost calm. She humiliated my husband and his family on the most important day of our lives. She took a gift that was given with pure love and treated it like garbage. You knew, Dad. You knew, and you didn't stop her. He looked at the floor, a lifetime of capitulation written in the slump of his shoulders. My mother waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't be so dramatic. You'll get a new car. A better one. A BMW. It's all arranged. That was it. That was her universe. A BMW could erase the legacy of a grandfather's love. A shiny new status symbol could replace a future built on memories and music. I looked at her, at this woman I had called Mom, and I saw a stranger. A hollow, performative shell of a person who understood transactions, but not connections. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at them, at the two people who had created me, and I felt nothing. The love I had for them, it was just gone, snuffed out. I turned and walked out of their house. I didn't slam the door. I closed it with a soft, definitive click. Back in our apartment, Leo was packing for our non-existent honeymoon. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice hollow. I walked over to my closet, filled with the clothes my mother had bought me, the costumes for the part of the perfect daughter. I started pulling them out. The preppy sweaters, the designer jeans, the little black dresses for her cocktail parties. I made a pile in the middle of the room. I looked at Leo, my eyes dry now, my soul quiet and still. "We are going to be so quiet," I whispered. "We are going to disappear from their world so completely, it will be like we never existed." He nodded, understanding instantly. He started gathering his own things, the sheet music for a symphony he'd been writing, his favorite records, the simple, beautiful life we had built together. We didn't leave a note. We didn't answer the phone. We used our savings, the money Leo had been putting away for my ring, and we bought 2 one-way bus tickets to the city. We took only what fit into backpacks. We left the pile of clothes, the silverware, the entire life my mother had designed for me, right there on the floor. As the bus pulled out of the station, leaving my hometown, my family, and the ghost of that vintage Volvo behind, I looked out the window at the fading lights. They had taken our dignity. They had taken our wedding day. They had tried to take our future, but they had left me with my silence. And in that silence, a new kind of strength was being forged. If silence is all I have, I'll make it my weapon. Have you ever heard the sound a city makes? Not the cars or the sirens, but the hum. The sound of millions of people living their lives, anonymous and free. That sound became our symphony. For the first year, it was the only music we had. We arrived in the city with $200 and a bottomless well of resolve. We found a studio apartment smaller than my old walk-in closet. It had a leaking faucet and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen because it was ours. No scripts, no expectations. Leo found work playing gigs wherever he could: subway stations, dive bars, wedding receptions for people who actually liked music. I got a job as a barista. We were poor. We ate a lot of rice and beans, but we were free. The weight of my mother's world was gone, and even though we were struggling, we could breathe. In the silence I had chosen, I started to find my own voice. Not the voice of the dutiful daughter or the marketing student, but my voice, the one that loved art. At the coffee shop, I started doodling on the napkins. Little sketches of the customers of the city skyline. A regular, a kindly older woman who was a graphic designer, saw them. "You have a real eye, honey," she said. "You should do something with this." So, I did. I used my employee discount to buy a cheap sketchbook. At night, after my shifts while Leo was at a gig, I would draw. I drew our story. I drew a beautiful hunter green car. I drew a woman with a monstrous smile, holding a pair of scissors, cutting the strings on a marionette. I drew the marionette broken on the ground, slowly piecing itself back together with gold kintsugi style. I didn't know it then, but I was drawing my revenge. I posted them online on an anonymous art blog. I called it The Silent Strings. It was my scream into the void, and the void answered. People connected with the pain, with the resilience. A small following grew. The woman from the coffee shop, her name was Clara, became my mentor. She taught me about digital art, about graphic design. She helped me get a portfolio together. I landed a junior designer job at a small, scrappy agency. I was good at it. Really good. I understood emotion, narrative, visual storytelling. I understood pain and redemption. Leo's music began to find its audience too. His compositions, once pure jazz, started to incorporate elements of our journey: the anger, the sadness, the fierce, defiant joy of building a life from scratch. He got a residency at a respected club. A music producer heard him one night and offered him a contract. 5 years. That's how long it took. 5 years of silent, relentless work. We were no longer poor. We moved to a light-filled loft with room for a baby grand piano and a proper art studio. We were successful. We were happy, deeply, authentically, roaringly happy. We had a life that was a beautiful, chaotic, perfect composition of our own making. We never contacted my family. My phone had been disconnected within months of leaving. They had no way to find us. We were ghosts, and that was the point. But I never forgot. The memory of the wedding, of the car, of the humiliation, was a quiet, cold ember in my heart. It wasn't hate. It was a debt of truth that needed to be settled. Clara, now the head of her own successful design firm, came to me with a project. A huge one. The Harmony Foundation, she said. Massive national charity. They're rebranding. It's a competitive pitch. I want you to lead the creative. I looked at the brief. The Harmony Foundation. I knew that name. It was one of my mother's pet charities. The one she used to chair galas for. The epicenter of her social standing. The ember in my heart flickered into a flame. I'll do it, I said, my voice calm. I poured everything into that pitch. Not anger, but a profound understanding of the dichotomy at the heart of the charity world, the public performance versus the private, quiet work. My campaign was called Quiet Harmony. It was about the unsung heroes, the volunteers in the trenches, not the gala attendees in ball gowns. It was authentic, raw, and powerful. We won the contract. It was a 6-figure deal. The launch was to be a major event, a private dinner for top donors. Of course, my mother would be there. She was still on the board. The night of the launch, I dressed with intention. I wore a simple, exquisitely cut black jumpsuit. No frills, no princess gowns. My hair was sleek, my makeup minimal. I looked like a CEO. I looked like power. Leo held my hand as we walked into the venue, a stunning, modern art museum. You ready? He asked softly. I squeezed his hand. I've been ready for 5 years. The room was filled with the city's elite, and there, near the center, was my mother. She hadn't aged a day, but she seemed smaller. The room didn't seem to orbit around her as much. She was chatting animatedly, but her eyes were scanning the crowd, hungry for the next important connection. She didn't see me at first, not until Clara took the stage to introduce the new campaign. And the visionary behind Quiet Harmony, the creative director who understood the soul of our mission, Maya Ross. I walked onto the stage. The spotlight hit me. I saw my mother's head snap around. Her jaw literally dropped. The color drained from her face. She looked from me to the massive screen behind me displaying my artwork, to Leo, standing proudly in the audience, beaming at me. It was a perfect tableau of her worst nightmare. The daughter she had tried to mold and control, standing in a place of power she could never reach. The son-in-law she had despised, a successful man radiating pride. Their success, built without her, was a monument to her failure. I gave my presentation. My voice was steady, confident, passionate. I talked about authenticity. I talked about the danger of performance over substance. I talked about the power of quiet strength. Every word was a velvet-wrapped brick hurled directly at her. I didn't look at her once. I didn't need to. I could feel her shock, her humiliation, her rage radiating from across the room. After the applause, as people mingled, I finally made my move. I walked through the crowd, a glass of champagne in my hand, towards the small group she was standing with. They were fawning over her, as always. I stopped just beside her. The conversation died. Everyone turned to look at me. My mother's smile was so tight it looked like it might crack her face. Yes, we had no idea you were in the city. We've been so worried. There was no need to worry, I said calmly. Leo and I have been doing wonderfully. His new album is being released next month. It's been nominated for a few awards. But I'm sure you're too busy with your charities to follow the jazz scene. The subtext was a nuclear bomb. You thought his music was worthless. It is now award-winning. I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm. I saw her eyes dart to Leo, who was now standing a few feet away, watching the scene with a calm, steady gaze. She saw the confidence in him, the success. The man he had become without her permission. She had tried to break us. She had tried to humiliate us into submission. And now, here we were, whole, successful, untouchable. The queen of her small social world was standing in a room where her daughter was the one with the real power, the one with the talent, the vision, the unshakable peace. I took a sip of my champagne, never breaking eye contact. She finally stands face to face with the one who destroyed her life. The space around us had become a vacuum. Her friends, sensing the tectonic plates shifting, made flimsy excuses and drifted away, leaving my mother and me in a bubble of devastating silence. The elegant hum of the party continued around us, a stark contrast to the frozen war zone between us. My mother's composure finally shattered. The socialite mask slipped, and the raw, furious woman beneath was laid bare. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous so only I could hear. "How dare you show up here, after all these years, and humiliate me like this?" I didn't flinch. I took another slow sip of champagne. "Humiliate you? I'm the creative director for a campaign you just applauded. I'm here to do my job, something I'm very good at." "You vanished," she spat out. "You broke your father's heart. We didn't know if you were dead or alive." "Did you look?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Did you hire an investigator? Did you check the hospitals? Or did you just tell your friends your dramatic daughter had run off with that unsuitable musician and you were so worried?" The flush on her cheeks told me everything. She hadn't. Her worry had been another performance. "We would have found you if we'd known you were. We're doing this," she said, gesturing vaguely at the room, at my success, as if it were a dirty secret. "Doing what, Mother? Building a life? A real one? Without your permission? Without your BMWs and your country clubs?" I leaned in slightly, my eyes locking with hers. "That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Permission, control. You couldn't control who I loved, so you tried to destroy it." On our wedding day, in front of everyone we knew, the word wedding hung in the air between us. The unspoken crime. Her eyes darted around, desperate for an escape, for a way to rewrite history. "That car was a piece of junk. I was saving you from embarrassment. I gave you a chance to start your marriage with a gesture of class. You gave away a piece of Leo's family history," I corrected, my voice like ice. "You took a gift given with more love and class than you will ever possess, and you treated it like trash. You humiliated my husband and his kind, wonderful parents to prove a point. That your money and your standing made you better than them." She was trembling now, with a rage so pure it was almost beautiful. "I am your mother. Everything I did for you." "No," I said, the word final and absolute. "You did it for you. You wanted a daughter who was a reflection of you. A trophy. You never saw me. You never saw Leo. You only saw how we didn't fit into the perfect picture on your mantle." I saw something flicker in her eyes then. Not remorse, but a flicker of terrified understanding. She was realizing that the quiet, pliable daughter she had known was gone. This woman in front of her could not be manipulated, shamed, or controlled. "What do you want from me, Maya?" Her voice was a broken whisper, stripped of all its performative power. "An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you misunderstood my intentions." It was the worst apology in the history of apologies. It was an apology for my feelings, not for her actions. I almost laughed. There was no victory in this. There was no moment of tearful reconciliation. She was incapable of it. She was a hollow woman, and my words were just echoing in the empty chamber of her soul. And in that moment, my revenge was complete. It wasn't about her apology. It wasn't about making her hurt as I had hurt. My revenge was my own freedom. My revenge was the life I had built. My revenge was standing here, whole and happy and powerful, and showing her that her poison could not touch me. "I don't want anything from you, Mother," I said, and I meant it. The ember in my heart had gone out, leaving only cool, clean ash. "Not your apology, not your money, not your approval. I haven't needed any of it for a very long time," I set my champagne glass down on a passing tray. Leo and I are happy. We're successful. We're loved. We have a life you can't even imagine because it's built on things you don't value. Authenticity, music, art, love. I took a step back, ready to return to my husband, to my real life. Goodbye, mother. I turned and started to walk away. I felt lighter than I had in a decade. The debt was settled. The score was even. Not because she had paid, but because I had realized there was no debt. She had nothing I wanted. Wait, she cried out, her voice strangled. I paused, but didn't turn. Your father. He's not well. Now, I turned. I looked at her, and I saw the final, desperate card in her hand. Not love, not remorse, but guilt. His heart, she pleaded. He misses you. I studied her face, looking for the truth. My father, the gentle satellite, the man who had stood by and let it all happen. A part of me ached for him, but a stronger part knew that he had made his choice over and over again. If he misses me, I said softly, he knows where I am now, and with that, I walked away. I walked through the crowd, straight into Leo's waiting arms. He held me close, and I breathed in his familiar scent of soap and music. You okay? He murmured into my hair. I looked up at him, at the man who had loved me through the shattering and helped me rebuild something more beautiful. I saw the ghost of the vintage Volvo in his eyes, not as a loss, but as the kind of love that lasts, the kind that builds a future. I'm free, I whispered. And I was. We didn't stay. We slipped out of the gala, hand in hand, and walked out into the cool night air of the city. Our city. We walked to where our car was parked, a sensible, reliable, second-hand SUV we'd bought together. It wasn't a symbol of anything but our shared, practical life, and I loved it. As we drove away from the museum, from the ghost of my mother and the life she had designed, I felt no anger, no bitterness, just a profound, peaceful closure. My revenge was not in her humiliation. It was in my healing. It was in the quiet, steadfast life Leo and I had built, a life so full of real love that the memory of her cruelty had simply faded. It had lost its power. I had taken the pain and the betrayal, and I had not let it make me hard or hateful. I had let it teach me. I had let it make me strong. I had used it as fuel to build a life that was my own masterpiece. She had given away a car, a symbol of a future, but she had given me something far more valuable in return. The blazing, unshakable knowledge that I never needed her approval to fly. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's justice wrapped in grace. Silent revenge.